So as most of you people know by now, the iPhone 12 mini has been a pretty perplexing device in a lot of different ways. And I personally been using it kind of for since it came out, I think about 2 weeks, 3 weeks now. And what I can tell you is that, first of all, there's never been a perfect phone. Okay, I want to get that out of the way. There's never been a phone that first came out that was perfect in every single angle. One of the best phones I think that came out this year, which was probably the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, also had a couple of issues. I've always found out, with Android, specifically with One UI, it's always been a mess. And even though it's still, in the beta process that's still getting better, One UI 3 is still more or less the same as One UI 2. And even though the hardware is great, the software sometimes isn't all there. So I mean to say that because that phone is a $1,400 phone right now, it's still not a perfect device. And when you have a phone like the iPhone 12 mini, which honestly, in my opinion, the biggest selling point of that phone is probably the size, it really just shows to me that a lot of people, especially me, we can kind of overlook a lot of the issues, smaller battery, maybe not as good a performance as, the biggest model, different things like that. We can kind of overlook those things because we get a smaller form factor. But when it comes down to actual problems within the phone themselves and across the board, there does kind of, it does leave a little bit more to be desired in some cases. And I will kind of explain that further along around this video. But if you want to pick up an iPhone 12 mini, I'll find the cheapest one on Amazon. I'll link it down in the description below. You can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, I've already done 50 billion comparisons of this phone. I've compared it to pretty much every single model of phone, before it and probably phones after it eventually next year. And I can definitely tell you there are a lot of pros and a lot of cons. I think the panel itself is actually pretty decent. It's definitely not a lower resolution panel. It's 1080p. We still haven't gotten quite like 1440p panels on any iPhone. We didn't get the 120Hz refresh rate improvement that we were expecting to see. And that's one thing I was really hoping to see with these specific phones, but we really didn't get it this year. But the panel itself wasn't bad, even compared to the 11 Pro Max, the 12 Pro Max, all these other phones. I really didn't see that big of a difference. It's just a smaller thing, which is good. When you look at a lot of other budget phones around the whole entire marketplace, you tend to see that they put, cheaper, worse panels on, lower end models. In this case, it really wasn't that. Like, they're all pretty much the same when it comes down to it, in my opinion. The build quality is great. I didn't really have any problems there. But definitely when it comes down to just the problems that the front screen has had with a lot of other phones across the board, including the 12 Pro and all these ones, we've pretty much been seeing this trend of basically these iPhones having issues with their panels, either yellow tint, green tints, random things like that. We've had a lot of issues when it comes down to that specific point, and I was hoping Apple would kind of fix it by the time I drop a full review of this thing, which this is, and they still haven't fixed it yet. Oddly enough, they put out a recall program kind of for iPhone 11s, but we still haven't seen that quite yet for the 12 minis, so hopefully they push it out sooner than later. But that is a pretty big issue as well, and hopefully Apple does fix that. Now, we still haven't gotten USB Type-C on any of these phones, which doesn't really matter to me. I really don't care. Standard glass back on the back. And I mean, this phone feels like a very premium phone, and I'll give it that. It doesn't feel like a cheap phone. It does feel not as premium as the 12 Pro, 12 Pro Max, but it doesn't mean it feels cheap or cheaper. It just doesn't feel, it's kind of like the same thing, but a little bit different. And when you're holding the 12 mini, I mean, this phone feels like a very good phone. And it's so strange because, most phone manufacturers are making bigger and bigger phones, but not Apple. They're making smaller phones that are still appealing to a bunch of people. Now, the camera on this thing, I will be completely honest, I think it's a great camera for the most part, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best camera or even like a better camera than the previous model. I think it's honestly about the same thing. If I'm going to go and take night mode shots, if I'm going to take photos here and there, I think the 12 mini did a good job on a lot of the photos. I've already dropped like 3 or 4 video and photo comparisons by the time this specific review is coming out, and I saw that as same thing across the board. Like, it's probably a better camera, but I think a lot of people overhype these specific iPhone cameras for sure. I think, from the previous model to the next one, you don't really see too many differences. However, when you go about 2 to 3 generations behind, that's when you start seeing the differences. So this thing can still shoot 4K at 60. We still have pretty much the standard features that every single iPhone comes with nowadays. So it's not really anything that's super crazy. I think even the iPhone SE 2, quality-wise, it's about the same thing when it comes down to it. It's just, when it comes down to the front camera doing 4K at 60, that's where this phone kind of shines at. I feel like the iPhone 12 mini series and just the 12 series in general has a really good front camera setup, but it really isn't too much different from the previous generation, which was the 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max. I mean, these phones pretty much have the same type of camera modules when it comes down to it. It just so happens that the 12 mini has a better looking sensor, and from what I've seen, it does do a little bit of a better job at reducing noise across the board on every single photo, so I think that's a pretty important thing. But other than that, when it comes down to it, almost the same camera setup, I would not go from an iPhone 11 or an iPhone XS to the iPhone 12 mini or any of the iPhone 12 series just because of the camera. I really don't see that big of an improvement there. The jump, in my opinion, from like a Galaxy S10 to an S20 was a bigger difference than going from an iPhone 11 Pro to an iPhone 12 Pro, and especially going from an iPhone 11 to the 12 mini. It's about the same type of camera, to be honest. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the camera side. Now, software-wise, this thing's software is probably its biggest asset. And whenever I talk about any iPhone in general, I think, it definitely comes down to the software experiences, being one of the bigger aspects of these devices. And with the iPhone 12 mini, I mean, you're getting the same software support as that $1,000 plus phone of the 12 Pro Max. So that's a pretty big asset. Even though you're spending, cheaper, it's still not a super cheap phone. You're spending less money on this specific device, but you're getting the same software experience. You're going to get the same software features. And the only thing I am kind of hesitant on is that if you ever want to do split screen multitasking on your iPhone, if it's ever supported on iOS when these phones are still supported, you're going to have a pretty weird time on the 12 mini because it's going to be a smaller screen, but it's inevitably going to happen. I think iOS 15 is probably going to bring it just because they had a picture-in-picture with, iOS 14. So we could see it here, who knows? But specifically software versions and everything is going to be perfectly fine on the iPhone 12 mini for 100% fact. So in terms of software, this phone is going to be lasting a long time. Now performance, this is the biggest thing about my specific iPhone 12 mini experience, which has been the most conflicting thing ever. Now this thing has that brand new Apple A14 Bionic chip inside of it, which in my opinion is one of the best chipsets. I think that chipset is extremely fast. It's almost the same thing as the A13, which was a little bit better than the A12. The jump from the A12 to the A13 was a bigger jump than the A13 to the A14 in my opinion, but this phone has 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, I'm going to say that again. This phone has 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, I could sit here and say, this phone's performance is so much better than the other one. And it's really not. It's about the same. I don't want to be a hater. I use an iPhone 12 Pro as my main device. I love it. I hate it for some aspects too, which I already talked about in my full review. But I will tell you, with the iPhone 12 mini, it's a smooth phone. It's a fast phone, and it might be faster than the previous generation. But my biggest problem with this phone is the RAM management. And it's no surprise. I've talked about this 4 and 5 different videos now, and a lot of people know it. Apple still hasn't addressed it. They still have not pushed out software updates yet to fix these things. I think since the iPhone 12 Pro came out or the iPhone 12 mini came out, we've really only gotten like 1 or 2 versions of software, which I think is pretty insane. I think the 12 mini came out when iOS 14.2 came out, and we've only gotten iOS 14.2.1, and there's still a lot of issues with these specific software versions, so I don't know what Apple's going to do, but RAM management has always been an issue with these devices since the 12 Pro and the standard 12, but the 12 mini specifically has worse RAM management than all those phones, which is weird because I thought it was supposed to be, the same phone as the iPhone 12, but it still gave me worse experience overall than the 12, which is very weird. Was Apple lying there? I understand it's a cheaper phone, but they said, it was about the same, but I've been getting worse RAM management on the 12 mini than the 12, and I've been getting worse RAM management from the 12 mini than the iPhone 11, and I think even the iPhone 10R, and I think even the iPhone 8 and 7, which is very weird, and I think I talked about those in different videos as well in those speed tests, and that's super insane to me that a phone manufacturer can release a phone, say it's better, say it has twice the amount of RAM, but still perform worse. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it'd be one thing if we were on the first version of iOS 14. We're on iOS 14.2.1 on these phones, and we're still experiencing these problems. So I don't know what it is. It's very weird, but hopefully Apple can go ahead and fix it. When it comes down to everything else though, this phone is fast, this phone is smooth, but specifically with the RAM management, it's still not fixed, and hopefully Apple can go and fix it. And once they do, I'll make an updated review of this specific phone, but it's very weird that we're still experiencing these issues weeks and weeks after. I bought this phone, I didn't get sponsored by Apple, I literally had to go out, pre-order this thing, wait weeks for it, and this is the type of experience we get, which is very weird. So when it comes down to that, that pretty much covers it up. Now battery wise, which is where I'm going to end the specific, comparison off, I will tell you the battery on this phone leaves me a lot more to be desired. And it has a 2200 mAh battery, something along those lines, which puts it lower than an iPhone 6s Plus battery, which is very weird. I don't understand why Apple always does these type of things. It's just, they increase the battery, they decrease it. Now on this specific phone size, there's only so much room they can mess with, and I will tell you, I thought the battery would be worse than it really was. It's still not a really good battery. We've been experiencing a ton of battery problems across the board with a ton of different iPhones. So I think that's a pretty big thing to keep in mind too, that right now the iPhone 12 series, the battery isn't great, and the 12 mini, because it has a smaller battery size, only makes it that much worse. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind. With my iPhone 12 Pro, the battery life is very, very, very average. It's worse than what I was getting on the 11 Pro on iOS 13. So I'm expecting it to get better, but Apple still hasn't made any announcements, still hasn't made anything. So With that being said, I think the iPhone 12 mini will eventually get better, but as of right now, I just don't know. Like, it's just a smaller size battery. It's always going to be small. It's not like they can push a software update that'll increase the battery size. So you're only stuck with that 2,200 something milliamp hour battery. I think it's 2,227. So even then, if it, they increase the battery life by a little bit, that'd be great. But you only have a smaller size battery inside of it, so there's only so much they can play with. But when it comes down to everything else, I will tell you, the battery life isn't bad. It's pretty much expected, but from so many conflicting things I read online about iOS 14.2 and 14.2.1, decreasing the battery life and all that stuff, hopefully Apple will go ahead and push out updates that'll fix this. So that's really pretty much covers up my whole entire experience about the iPhone 12 mini in like a 10 or 15 minute long video. Now, this is how I will pretty much end off for you guys. I think the iPhone 12 mini, if you currently have it, if you currently bought it, I will tell you, the worst is probably already over for the most part. If you're watching this video, you probably have maybe experienced some of these, maybe you haven't if you're lucky, but a majority of these issues that you're experiencing are probably already done. I don't think you're going to experience some crazy new defect. I think a lot of the issues, the screen, the performance, the battery, maybe some other cellular issues, including 5G and LTE turning off all the time, Wi-Fi switching off and things like that. Apparently those are going to be fixed by Apple at some point. It's very weird to me that we're already so far into iOS 14 and we're still experiencing those problems. Those type of things are very weird to me, and I don't understand how or what Apple's going to do to fix those. But I will tell you, if you already got through this far, you're already pretty much done. But if you currently own a phone like an iPhone 10 or an iPhone 8 or a Galaxy S3 or whatever you have, I will tell you, I would probably end up waiting to pick up a phone like an iPhone 12 mini, in my opinion. I would wait until people like me or whoever else you watch or on Reddit, go to Reddit and just go to the iPhone subreddit and just look at what people have to say. If people are currently saying like, oh, the phone is so much better now, Apple pushed out iOS 14.3 and it fixed all these issues, then I would say go for it, go buy it. But I don't want to recommend a phone that's still kind of faulty. It just doesn't really sit right with me. And throughout my whole entire videos I've published, I've been completely honest. You can even look back at any single iPhone video comparison I dropped. Like, I pretty much say the same thing. Like, yeah, it's a great phone, but because there's so many issues with it, probably wouldn't recommend it. But on top of that, more so, it's just kind of like, if you have the money, go for it. Like, it's not really going to be that big of a deal. Like, it's $729, which that in and of itself is a problem with me too, because they increased the price from the previous generation, but it's okay. I've already hit on that like 10 times. But I think when it comes down to it, this phone leaves a lot more to be desired, in my opinion. And if Apple can go ahead and fix these issues, hopefully I think it will get better. And I swear, I hope, I pray every day that it does get better. But as of right now, it's a kind of a faulty phone, to be completely honest. So that really pretty much covers it up for the most part. Kind of a weird ending. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.